The world does not announce when it enters a dangerous era. It drifts there quietly, carried by headlines that feel distant until they no longer are. And today, humanity finds itself standing closer to the edge than at any moment in modern history, because beneath the noise of daily news cycles, something far more profound is happening. A slow fracture of the global order that once promised stability, cooperation, and restraint, an order born from the ashes of World War and shaped by decades of uneasy peace, now strained by rising powers, broken trust, and technologies moving faster than human wisdom can follow. And nowhere is this sense of peril more clearly symbolized than by the doomsday clock, a stark and unsettling metaphor maintained by scientists who study humanity's greatest existential risks. A clock that now stands at just 85 seconds to midnight, closer than it has ever been before, not because of a single crisis, but because of many overlapping and compounding, all unfolding at once. This moment did not arrive suddenly. It has been building for years, shaped by the slow erosion of diplomatic norms and the return of raw power politics, as major nations increasingly act not as partners in a shared system, but as rivals in a zero-sum struggle for influence, territory, and technological dominance. And as this shift accelerates, the institutions that once mediated conflict, treaties, alliances, international law, are being tested in ways they were never designed to withstand, because the world that created them no longer exists in the same form, and the assumptions that guided global decision-making after the Cold War are rapidly losing relevance. Across Europe, war has returned in a form many believed belonged to the past, with borders challenged by force and cities once again scarred by artillery and missiles, reminding the world that peace was never guaranteed, only managed, and even that management now feels fragile as the conflict sends shockwaves far beyond the battlefield, disrupting energy markets, food supplies, and global trade, while deepening divisions between nations that see the war not only as a regional struggle, but as a defining test of the international order itself, a line drawn between competing visions of sovereignty, power, and accountability. In the Middle East, long-standing tensions have hardened into cycles of escalation and retaliation, where unresolved conflicts intersect with regional rivalries and global interests, creating a landscape where a single spark can ignite far-reaching consequences and where diplomacy often struggles to keep pace with events unfolding on the ground. As alliances shift, ceasefires collapse, and civilian populations bear the heaviest costs, while the wider world watches, divided over how and whether to intervene. Meanwhile, in the Indo-Pacific, the balance of power is undergoing a profound transformation as rising economic and military capabilities fuel competition between established powers and emerging challengers, particularly around contested waters and strategic trade routes, where naval patrols, military exercises, and diplomatic signaling form a constant tense choreography, and where the stakes are nothing less than control over the arteries of the global economy, because in an interconnected world, dominance at sea translates into leverage everywhere else. Yet geopolitics alone does not explain why the current moment feels uniquely dangerous, because layered on top of traditional rivalries is a technological revolution that is reshaping how power is exercised and how conflicts may be fought. And at the center of that revolution lies artificial intelligence, a tool of extraordinary potential and equally extraordinary risk, now being rapidly integrated into military systems, intelligence analysis, surveillance networks, and decision-making processes, often faster than ethical frameworks or international agreements can keep up, raising the unsettling possibility that future crises may unfold at machine speed, leaving little room for human judgment, restraint, or correction. For the first time in history, algorithms are being tasked not only with gathering information, but with interpreting it, prioritizing threats, and in some cases, recommending or executing actions that carry life and death consequences. And while proponents argue that AI can reduce human error and improve efficiency, critics warn that it may instead amplify biases, misunderstandings, and miscalculations, especially in high-pressure situations where incomplete data and false signals are the norm, not the exception, and where a single automated decision could trigger escalation before leaders even have time to fully understand what is happening. This convergence of geopolitical rivalry and technological acceleration has created a feedback loop of insecurity, where nations feel compelled to adopt new systems simply because their rivals are doing the same, even if the long-term consequences are poorly understood. And this logic, familiar from the nuclear arms race of the 20th century, is once again shaping global behavior as trust erodes and transparency becomes harder to maintain, pushing states towards secrecy, speed, and preemption rather than cooperation and caution. Nuclear weapons, long regarded as the ultimate deterrent, have not disappeared from this equation. Instead, they loom in the background as both a stabilizing force and an existential threat. As arms control agreements weaken or collapse, modernization programs advance, and rhetoric surrounding nuclear capabilities grows more explicit, more normalized, and more casual, eroding taboos that once constrained political discourse and making the unthinkable feel incrementally more imaginable, even as the consequences of such weapons remain absolute and irreversible. At the same time, the global system is being strained by challenges that transcend borders and defy military solutions, from climate change and pandemics to economic inequality and mass displacement, each acting as a threat multiplier that intensifies existing tensions and exposes the limits of national responses in an interdependent world. And yet cooperation on these issues has become increasingly difficult, as geopolitical competition undermines trust and short-term interests overshadow long-term survival, leaving humanity trapped in a paradox where collective action is more necessary than ever, but harder to achieve than at any point in recent memory. Information itself has become a battlefield, as digital platforms enable narratives to spread at unprecedented speed, blurring the line between truth, propaganda, and perception, and allowing state and non-state actors alike to shape public opinion, sow confusion, and erode confidence in institutions, further fragmenting societies and weakening the internal cohesion needed to navigate external threats. Because when populations cannot agree on basic facts, the foundations of democratic decision-making begin to crack. And yet, amid this landscape of risk and uncertainty, the future is not predetermined, because history shows that moments of greatest danger often coincide with moments of greatest choice, when decisions made by individuals, institutions, and societies can either accelerate collapse or chart a different course. And while the doomsday clock offers a sobering reminder of how close humanity may be to catastrophe, it is not a prophecy but a warning, a call to confront uncomfortable realities and to recognize that the systems governing global power were created by human beings and can therefore be reshaped by them. The question now facing the world is not simply whether conflict can be avoided, but whether a new framework for coexistence can emerge in time, one that acknowledges shifting power dynamics, integrates transformative technologies responsibly, and restores a measure of trust in an era defined by speed, complexity, and uncertainty. Because the choices made today in diplomacy rooms, research labs, military commands, and voting booths will echo far beyond the present moment, shaping the conditions under which future generations will live, and determining whether this era is remembered as the beginning of a long descent into fragmentation and confrontation, or as a turning point where humanity recognized the edge of the abyss and stepped back, not through fear alone, but through foresight, restraint, and the fragile yet enduring belief that survival, in the end, is a shared interest.